Phenomenon. It's a word used to describe a license or entity that has seen worldwide appreciation and fascination, whether it's from the youngest of children to the oldest of adults. It's something that can be easily recognized by even someone who hasn't even interacted with this license or entity within their respective platform. Mario could quite possibly be the world's biggest phenomenon. Hey everyone, this is BZK, and I'm gonna skip the history lesson of a franchise that everyone knows and just get down to the whole point of this video. See, I've been a big fan of the Mario pantheon of games since I was a toddler. The first video game I've ever beaten in its entirety was Super Mario World. I was a spiteful little shit disturber at the age of 5 who discrepantly deleted his older brother and mother's save file to start my own. And though it took me weeks to beat, I eventually finished the job. Ever since then, I've played countless different franchises under the Mario name, from his sports titles, the kart series, his abundance of RPGs, hell, even fucking Mario Paint. And even then, I was basically playing the Fly Swatter minigame all the time. Yeah, I've been around the Mario titles for quite some time now, but nothing flips my pancakes more than the classic platforming series that launched him into stardom and hyperbolically saved the future of gaming as we know it. Hey, you! Fuck you! And I would have to say, of all the games in the Super Mario series, the ones I've appreciated the most for the vast majority of my life would be the formerly spoken of Super Mario World, and the only GameCube incarnation of the series, Super Mario Sunshine. Being born in the mid-90s, I was too young to experience the revolutionary gladiator of platformers being Super Mario 64. Eventually, I have ended up playing and beating the game countless amounts of times, never really completing it though, because my patience was needle-dick thin as a child. Needle-dick! 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 But it never really struck the same chord with me as it did to countless other older kids at the time. But around the age of 6 or 7, I finally laid my hands on what was the brand new Mario game at the time, Super Mario Sunshine, and I was fucking frustrated with it. I don't know, maybe because I was so used to how older Mario games handled their progression, either collecting a required number of stars or simply running and jumping from left to right. I don't know. I mean, I did end up beating the game, albeit collecting 90-something shine sprites and not at all knowing how to get to Bowser out of pure grinding. But as I got older and the game started collecting some more dust, I've come to appreciate the finer assets of Sunshine. Its soundtrack, level design, the tight controls over Mario, the use of FLUDD and his additional contributions to the gameplay. Yeah, I'd say if I had to pick a Mario game that I could play over and over again, it would probably be Super Mario Sunshine. It's quite possibly my favorite platformer of the entire series. And yeah, what a fucking rebel opinion that I have, but hey, it's just an opinion. But I'm not here today to gloat about how amazing Super Mario Sunshine is to me and how it changed my life as a child. I'm actually here to share with you a quite interesting observation I've had with a couple of friends of mine from not too long ago. That observation being that Super Mario World and Super Mario Sunshine are not all that different if you get right down to it. In fact, I'd have to say Super Mario World represents itself in the 2D era of Mario, in the same fashion Super Mario Sunshine represents itself in the 3D era of Mario. Yeah, I know, my title for the video is a little clickbaity, but hey, it caught your fucking attention, so why not stay for the ride and hear me out? Now, I'm not saying both games are the exact same, far from it. What I'm saying is that both games share a lot of similarities that separates them from the other titles in their respective eras. To break it down, I'm going to go one by one with each point I'll make, just so I can stay on topic and not jump around so much. So without further ado, let's get started on the first topic, design. We all know how Mario's standard formula pretty much goes by now. There's a Mushroom Kingdom world, Desert world, Water world, Sky world, Ice world, yada yada yada, rinse and repeat next game. But Super Mario World and Super Mario Sunshine stray quite a bit away from the formula we've seen since Super Mario Bros. 3 and on. In fact, some of the reason these two games are quite well received is the fresh, new, and interesting areas Mario gets to explore this time. In Super Mario World, we're taken out of the Mushroom Kingdom that was present from the NES titles, and we're plunged into Dinosaur Land. Granted, the name isn't as creative as it sounds, but we've just been thrown into an area that we haven't seen before in a Mario game. Plus, I guess you can't get too insanely creative with a 16-bit Mario game without having to change the genre or gameplay style entirely. There are all new enemies that we get to bounce on and destroy, like the rather fragile but simple Rexes, to the very temperamental Wigglers, and even the fucking bastard-ass charging Chucks. We travel to places like Donut Plains, Chocolate Island, and Vanilla Dome. Fuck, I'm craving some food right now. We get to travel this big overworld and see how each area of the game connects in some degree. It's an entirely different feeling Mario experience. Granted, there's at least some familiarity involved with Super Mario World. We still have returning enemies like the Goombas and the Kitus and Koopas, although those fuckers are climbing on walls now. We're still rescuing the princess from the evil clutches of Bowser. We still have 8 different other castles to trek through to even get to the point. Yeah, there's still that familiarity that makes Mario, well, Mario. But overall, the amount changed to Mario's formula from previous games really makes it feel like a whole different experience. Now, on the other hand, Super Mario Sunshine goes into an even further direction and first seems to skip all that princess saving bullshit, and the gang decides to just take a vacation. Here we're visiting Isle Delfino, this tropical paradise, lovely scenery, resorts, beaches, theme parks, fucking food! And in the end, everything seems to be alright. And then Bowser comes and steals the princess, claims to have fucked her brains out, and spawns Bowser Jr. in a PG way. And it's up to Mario again to save the day and rescue the princess. Ah, fuck, I was just getting excited about that hot tub. Thanks a lot, Toadsworth. Now, personally, I think that Delfino Plaza itself is probably one of the greatest overworlds I've ever played. All of these luscious colors and interesting craftsmanship and layout of the buildings, the townspeople known as Piantas who occupy the isle, and just the very chill and relaxing vibe of the area makes me feel like, yeah, I deserve a fucking vacation. Look, Mario's a prone piece of shit who gets hurt by touching anything that even looks menacing. Let him deserve to eat all the... whatever the fuck these things are. Speaking of enemies, Sunshine's enemies end up being rather unique, albeit a couple of returning enemies like Boos, Bullet Bills, Chain Chomps, Bob-Ombs. However, Sunshine has its fair share of enemies that never return in later games, aside from some of the spin-off titles. We have these jellyfish-looking goobies who explode with paint upon impact, these duck-like cataquacks that launch Mario in the air if he gets too close. Then we also got these Goomba-looking replacements called Stew, that seem to be here because Goombas probably just didn't fit the overworld aesthetically. We even have some modified versions of Koopas homing electrical charges. Yeah, enemy types between both games are not only new, but they end up blending well with the environments, with each level homing favorable enemies that make sense, rather than just slapping a different color on them. Now, the scope of Isle Delfino isn't just in its relaxing nature. In fact, the whole aesthetic and feel to this overworld extends to its other levels, and ultimately makes it feel like, yeah, I'm exploring this entire island that in no way lacks any cohesion. As much as I do like the game, this was a problem I had with Super Mario 64. Jumping into paintings that sent you to different worlds with different environments kind of felt lazy to me, like as if the developers couldn't think of a better way to blend the levels together. Unless it was a problem with cartridge space, but then at least then I bet there could have been some other sense of coherency. Games like Super Mario Galaxy were more excusable for this kind of development, considering the scope of the idea being traveling throughout the fucking universe. But back to Sunshine, all the levels blend so flawlessly and at no point feel out of place for the rest of the game, and in the same vein that Super Mario World did it. Levels like Gelato and Serena Beach make you just want to catch some rays from the sun and show off that sexy Italian plumber bod. Areas like Noki Bay and Piana Village show off this luscious scenery that really makes you think that places like these have such heritage and history to their structure. But then you realize, oh shit, it only took a couple people to make this on a computer. The environments match the livelihood of Isle Delfino, making it feel like a living, breathing area to take part in, rather than CPUs that were just thrown in the game with no real sense of being part of the world than to stick out and be jumped on. Another thing that sticks out in these games as far as design goes are the game's secret levels. Yeah, I'm talking about Star Road from Mario World and the No Flood levels scattered throughout Sunshine. Both feel pretty similar to each other for the fact that, one, both take you out of the immersion of cohesion of the stage design from the rest of their games, and two, both test the players on their platform abilities by being some of the hardest, if not the hardest levels in their respective games. The hub world for the Star Road and Mario World completely takes you out of this prehistoric nature from the rest of the game, and puts you in this mixture of cosmic and futuristic flair with nightly lit backgrounds and stars twinkling everywhere. In Sunshine, the game basically just says, fuck the environments, fuck your overpowered Super Soaker, fuck you, and good luck traversing through these random ass platforms without your extra large Windex bottle saving you for some much needed airtime. Fuck. Okay, it's not entirely random. There still are twinkles of stars floating around in a massive texture surrounding the stage, giving the player that cosmic feel they accomplished in Super Mario World, albeit the platforms they have you traverse look like a toddler mixed his Duplos with his older brother's Legos. But because of this design choice, these parts really make themselves stand out from the rest of the game. Instead of being just another world Mario explores with a different temperature, they just fully feel like a world of its own at times, like you've just been whisked away to some other reality or destination you've never seen before. Kind of like what the games themselves are doing for the rest of the franchise. But yeah, in the end, both games have this sense of cohesion throughout the entirety of the adventure within them, while almost completely ditching the formula Super Mario games are normally known for. Alright, so let's finally get off this design spiel, tone it down from the aesthetics, and get into what usually makes most games fun, the gameplay, or to be more specific, Mario's mechanics and the abilities that allows him to further implement those mechanics. Mario has probably never felt any better to control in both Super Mario World and Sunshine. In Mario World, there's virtually no latency, no winding up, just simply turning left, right, jumping, and a couple other movements that make him much more varied. You can spin jump to hop over normally harmful obstacles and defeat enemies or even break open some blocks. You can throw items Mario picks up straight up in the air to dispatch foes. Although it's not necessary, it can be useful if you have Mario on his last leg. Mario's now a lot easier to move mid-jump as well, so navigating narrow pathways proves to be much easier than in previous games, especially considering Mario can outright leave the fucking screen if you soar too high. With improved mechanics like this, Mario's sprite detail has also much more variety. Mario's run speed never feels slow, with his sprite detail feeling like he never takes steps too short. Mario World's controls are varied, tight, and rarely does it give you the feeling that the game fucked you over, as opposed to the player's own actions. Super Mario Sunshine runs along the same formula with those controls. Aside from the lack of a long jump, all of Super Mario Sunshine's 3D movements are back from Super Mario 64, but vastly improved. One thing I didn't like, and I'm sure I can speak for a lot of players, is that little turnaround when you force Mario to switch directions. You know what I mean. In most games, you're going left and you want to go right, but instead of Mario simply switching directions on the fly, he does a bit of a half-circle turn, which honestly sucks when you're doing trickier platforming, especially on levels like Tick-Tock Clock and Rainbow Cruise, where paths are much more narrow and life-threatening to our beloved Plumber Boy. In Sunshine, it's as simple as flicking the joystick from one direction to the other and with virtually no latency. I guess it is fair to point out that while Super Mario 64 was the first step in the third dimension, Nintendo wasn't going to be completely flawless with the controls right off the bat. Adding that Z-axis in really adds a whole new amount of detail when controlling a character, so it was an impressive feat when they first attempted it. Either way, Sunshine and World both harness those very tight controls by learning from their early attempts and progressing forward, making for some of the most varied but easy to control mechanics in Mario games to date. Now, controls aside, nothing makes a Mario game pop out, especially Mario himself, than a variety of power-ups, which surprisingly, but not to its detriment, are not implemented in these two games as much. In Super Mario World, we have our standard of fare power-ups, the Mushroom, the Fire Flower, Starman. That's pretty much it. However, there is that glorious Cape Feather. Holy shit, does this thing break the flow of the game. As soon as you're available to get it, you can soar through these levels like fucking nothing. Just keep up that rhythm of maintaining the altitude of his, and you're pretty much golden. Aside from the height and distance you can reach, you can dispose of enemies with a simple spin, you can float to the ground much slower, making tricky platforming even more of a piece of red velvet cake. But you can also take out a whole bunch of ground enemies with a powerful ground stop mid-flight to give some enemies a taste of their own medicine. Yeah, that cape, man, there's no wonder you don't see this thing in any later installments. It's practically a godsend of power-ups throughout the entire franchise. Having this lack of power-ups is surprising to me, considering that just one game earlier, referring to Super Mario Bros. 3, there were items and power-ups oozing out of every level, like the fucking frog suit. How surreal would that be in a Mario game at the time? In Sunshine, rather than include even the simplest of power-ups to alter Mario's abilities, there's not even a single mushroom or fire flower in sight. Instead, we are given the gift of Flood. He's a
Flash liquidizer ultra dousing device.
Yeah, thanks. Basically, he's an overpowered water jet that allows him to blast water forward as a ranged weapon and solve puzzles. Also, it's one of the only power-ups in any Mario game that Mario actually has to replenish in order to use it. Thankfully, this isn't really much of a problem, considering that water is fucking surrounding him from every corner. Aside from the simple Super Soaker Flood can be, he does alter Mario's movements a great amount. There's the basic hover nozzle that Flood starts out with, allowing Mario to hover for a short amount of time to give him an extra boost of height and cover a bit more distance. This nozzle alone, used with a combination of jumps and flips from Mario, can get him around each level of Isle Delfino with so much ease. It makes Sunshine sprites an absolute breeze to get. But considering the game's platforming and puzzle solving is based around Flood, it isn't as game-breaking as much as the Cape Feather in Mario World was, but it does give the player the option of experimenting when completing a mission. Where the hover nozzle acts more of a middleman between Flood's abilities, the jet and rocket nozzle pushes the speak and spell talking squirt gun's abilities to its absolute limit. The jet nozzle acts as, well, the jet. It gives Mario an insane amount of speed to work with, and he can outright get all dash par on the overworld by allowing him to run across bodies of fucking water. Mario was just getting his training badges in the last game, now he's apparently a fucking superhero. The only downside to this power-up is that it makes Mario a lot harder to steer. But granted, if he could steer a lot tighter, I'm sure his internal organs might need a bit of rearranging afterwards. The rocket nozzle acts as, again, exactly as it sounds. It shoots Mario more straight up in the air after a small charge-up. In some worlds where you can find the nozzle, it makes getting extra height so much easier. However, the rocket nozzle does take a considerable amount of water to blast off even once. The rocket nozzle, by Nintendo, refilling required, batteries not included. I'd have to say, with the use of FLUDD, Super Mario Sunshine would end up being a much harder game than the final product. With these extra nozzles, it really does extend the extent to which Mario can travel and traverse the world, rather than just being something that's simply required to progress through the game. Granted though, the whole adventure of Sunshine is to clear up all that fucking paint. I'm pretty sure a fire flower wouldn't come in handy at this point. This is a problem I found in Super Mario Galaxy, unfortunately. The little twirl that adds a little extra height to Mario's jumps is really only effective to when he must travel from planet to planet. It's certainly not as versatile as FLUDD, and especially not as game-breaking as the Cape Feather, but it just doesn't add the versatility as much as the rest of the power-ups add throughout Galaxy. Additionally, the fact that FLUDD doesn't appear in any other Mario game as part of the gameplay, aside from, like, Super Smash Bros. And shit, makes FLUDD stick out even more as this unique gameplay element in an otherwise completely different experience compared to other games in the series. Now there's one more addition to the gameplay and mechanics that change up how Mario World and Sunshine really pop for Mario's movements, and it's the addition of the cutest fucking dinosaur you've ever seen since this motherfucker. Okay, maybe not him, but maybe this guy. Enter the jolly green dinosaur known as Yoshi. Now, the interesting thing about him is the backstory behind his inclusion into each of these games. Because of the hardware limitations on both the NES and N64 had, Yoshi actually had to be shut out from both the NES titles and Super Mario 64. They did in fact want Mario to ride him in some fashion, but they just couldn't program him well enough for him to be functional. I mean, yeah, he is at the top of Peach's castle in Mario 64, gives you some fucking extra lives and some sparkles. But that's barely a secret, nor is it how you'd want to include a character into the gameplay. But thankfully, when Nintendo advanced in the console generations, Yoshi finally not only made his debut, but also his return to the gameplay to Mario World and Sunshine respectively. In Super Mario World, we first run into him in one of the first levels hidden in that classic-looking egg, and from there on, we had the option to ride this guy. Now speaking of controls, Yoshi offers plenty of differences compared to Mario's run, jump, and spin maneuvers. Yoshi can not only jump higher, he can also eat oncoming enemies, providing a more environmentally safe disposal of Bowser's minions. Turning those fuckers into fertilizers, son! Alongside his movements, Yoshi's capable of some power-ups of his own. Depending on what color's Yoshi you ride, or what color Koopa shell he holds in his mouth, Yoshi can either fly, spit out fireballs, or cause some fucking earthquakes. Now, although there are instances in Mario World that would require these multicolored Yoshis, using him in the game is entirely optional. You could just let him rot away in that egg of his, never letting him see the light of day and internally questioning the existence of a shade lighter than black. Now switching over to the 6th generation of consoles, Yoshi makes his grand return to the platforming franchise and, well, I mean, you know, he's got different colors and stuff. Okay, yeah, compared to Super Mario World, Yoshi really isn't exploding out the seams with new abilities and such. I mean, for one thing, he does have that flutter jump carried over from Yoshi's Island that lets him remain in the air for an extended amount of time, while also gaining a fair amount of vertical distance. Alongside that, he can still swallow any enemies and foods he comes in contact with the use of that tongue that almost nudges into a fetish of its own. But the new thing added to his gameplay, and to pertain to the whole spraying liquids thing going on in the game, is that Yoshi can actually spray different colored juices from his mouth, depending on what colored Yoshi you're riding. Yeah, who'd have thought? The fate of Isle Delfino and Princess Peach can be partially saved with the help of a bulimic dinosaur's stomach acids. Now that's some fucked up shit, Nintendo. That deserves its own Cards Against Humanity card. Now, yeah, as disgusting as it sounds, it can actually be used to open up hidden passages to some secret shine sprites and levels, and to take out enemies. And yeah, I'd count myself out too if I were spray with some multicolored afternoon brunch. But at the end of the day, using Yoshi, aside from obtaining a shine sprite or two, is still entirely optional. You can still make it to Bowser by progressing through the story as it's laid out for you. Oh hey, there's that hot tub I wanted. Now, at the very end of the day, I love both Mario World and Sunshine a great deal. I grew up replaying them over and over again as a child, and I'm still going to find plenty of enjoyment replaying them in the future. The differences from these games from the rest of the series, however, do strike a chord with me. I love them both for how they changed up the formula and design of how Mario is portrayed within the main series. I love how they saw the opportunity with implementing new ideas that they could get away with, that ultimately worked out more so in their favor. I love their worlds and levels that provide a great deal of cohesion rather than a formulaic scenery change. I love the standalone items and gadgets that are part of the gameplay that give these games extra depth and even exploration a great amount of variety. And yeah, I gotta love that cute fucker Yoshi. No matter how different these games are from most of the other Mario games, they're still just as impactful in their own right. And it's great seeing nowadays that Nintendo are actually trying new things as well with Super Mario Odyssey. Everything from the cohesive exploration of the game's kingdoms to the use of a near game-breaking but ultimately expansive mechanic known as Cappy, to even including Yoshi as a reward for the player to experience really makes me think that Super Mario Odyssey is now the HD era of Mario's black sheep of the bunch, akin to the likes of Super Mario World and Sunshine. Knowing Nintendo, it'll be quite some time until we see a game as different to the formula as these three games go. But in the meantime, let's all gather up as many stars, shine sprites, and even moons as we can, and enjoy a great dose of gaming history. This is BZK, and I will see you next time.